Chapter 10. The Oath That Killed Them. 6 oars moved without the men who had held them. The surviving sailors avoided looking at the empty places along the deck. No one spoke about the screams from the cliffs. They rowed until their arms weakened, and the passage disappeared behind them. Then green land appeared ahead. Cattle covered the hills near the shore. Odysseus recognized the island immediately. It belonged to Helios, the sun god. Tiresias had warned him in the land of the dead. Circe had repeated the warning before he left her shore. The cattle must not be harmed. If the men left them untouched, they could still reach Ithaca. If they killed even one, their ship would be destroyed. Odysseus ordered the crew to continue past the island. The men refused. They were exhausted from rowing. They had survived the Sirens and watched Scylla tear 6 men from the ship. They wanted food, sleep, and solid ground beneath them. Eurylochus argued that forcing them onward would break what remained of the crew. Odysseus studied the men around him. Their strength was failing. Their fear was turning into anger. If he forced them back to the oars, they might turn against him before the ship reached open water. Odysseus changed his decision. They would land for one night. Before anyone stepped ashore, he made every man swear not to touch the cattle. They would eat only the supplies carried aboard the ship. The crew agreed. The ship entered a sheltered bay. That night, the wind rose. By morning, a storm covered the sea. Waves struck the shore and blocked every route away from the island. The men waited. The storm continued. Days passed. Their supplies began to disappear. Odysseus divided the food carefully. He reduced each man's portion. He guarded what remained. But no plan could make their provisions last forever. The last grain was eaten. The final jars were emptied. The men searched the rocks for fish and trapped birds along the shore. Each day, they found less. The cattle remained nearby. They moved across the hills in large herds. They were strong, well-fed, and always within sight of starving men. Odysseus watched the crew closely. He knew the oath was weakening. Hunger had stripped away their patience. Some men stared at the cattle instead of the sea. Others began questioning whether the warnings had been true. Odysseus reminded them what Tiresias had said. He warned them that one slaughtered animal could destroy them all. But the storm continued. The men grew thinner. Their movement slowed. Their obedience became resentment. Odysseus had kept them alive through monsters, giants, and war. Now he could not give them the one thing they needed: food. He left the camp and climbed inland to pray for help. He asked the gods to end the storm and open a path across the sea. As he prayed, a deep sleep was forced upon him. Odysseus could no longer watch the camp. Eurylochus gathered the men. He told them they had already begun to die. They could keep their oath and starve, or eat the cattle and risk punishment later. The choice was simple to men whose bodies were failing. They knew the warning. They knew what they had sworn. They chose to break the oath anyway. They selected the strongest animals from the herd. They drove them away from the others. Then they killed them. Odysseus awoke to the smell of burning meat. He ran toward the shore. The men were gathered around the fires. The cattle lay slaughtered beside them. The warning had been broken. The disaster had already begun. Odysseus ordered them to stop. They ignored him. Some had already eaten. Others were cutting more meat from the animals. Odysseus could not undo what they had done. He could not punish every man without destroying the crew himself. He could only watch as the men continued eating the cattle they had sworn not to harm. For 6 days, they fed from the slaughtered herd. On the 7th day, the storm weakened. The sea became calm enough to leave. Odysseus ordered the crew back aboard. The men raised the sail. The island slowly disappeared behind them. For a short time, the ship moved across calm water. Then the sky darkened. A violent wind struck the sail. The mast bent under the force. The crew rushed to secure the ropes. Before they could turn the ship, lightning split the sky. The bolt struck the mast. Wood exploded across the deck. The mast collapsed. The ship rolled beneath the impact. Another wave struck the hull and broke it open. The deck split beneath the men. Sailors were thrown into the sea. Odysseus reached for the nearest man. A wave pulled him away. Others clung to pieces of the ship, but the storm tore them apart. The ship broke into wreckage. One by one, the remaining men disappeared beneath the water. Eurylochus vanished with them. Odysseus grabbed the broken mast and part of the keel. He tied them together with a strip of rope and climbed onto the wreckage. The storm carried him away from the sinking ship. When he looked back, nothing remained. Every man who had left Troy under his command was dead. Some had been killed by enemies. Some had been lost to monsters. Some had died because of Odysseus's pride. Odysseus drifted across the sea on broken timber. There were no sailors left to lead. No crew remained to obey his orders. No one remained to blame him or depend upon him. His command was over. From that moment forward, Odysseus was no longer a captain trying to bring his men home. He was a survivor trying to reach Ithaca alone.